It was supposed to be just another weekend. On a cool, overcast Saturday afternoon in late May 2019, Noah Greene packed a small overnight bag, locked the door to his modest apartment in Eugene, Oregon, and started his car. He wasn't going far, just a 2-hour drive south to the coast. But for him, it meant everything. It had been over a year since he last held his son. He had waited for this moment. Fought for it. The court had finally granted him visitation, not full custody, not even shared. Just a few precious hours to spend with the little boy he once rocked to sleep. And so Noah drove to Florence, where his ex-wife Sierra Walsh had promised to bring Eli, their 6-year-old, for a short family visit. No lawyers. No courtrooms. Just a chance to reconnect. But Noah Greene never came home. At first, no one panicked. His younger brother Joel figured he might have extended the trip. Noah was spontaneous like that. Maybe Sierra had softened. Maybe they were finally acting like co-parents again. But Sunday passed without a text. The Monday. And by Tuesday morning, when even Noah's university supervisor hadn't heard from him, Joel knew something was wrong. He filed a missing person report that same day. The Eugene police took the case seriously from the start. Noah wasn't the kind of man who disappeared. He was a doctoral student in law at the University of Oregon, structured, careful, deliberate. He never missed class, never missed a payment, and never failed to call his brother back. His car, a navy blue Toyota Corolla, was found parked neatly outside a rented Airbnb on the outskirts of Florence. The vehicle was locked. His backpack and wallet were still inside. The bed in the rental had been made. The kitchen was clean. Nothing at first glance seemed out of place. But Noah wasn't there. And Sierra? She had a story. She told detectives that Noah had shown up at the Airbnb as planned. They had spent the afternoon with Eli, went to a small park, shared a meal. But when they returned to the house, things took a dark turn. She claimed Noah had made an unwanted advance, that he tried to force himself on her in the bedroom. According to her, she fought him off, screamed, and he ran out, humiliated and angry. That, she said, was the last time she saw him. But something about the story felt off. Too clean. Too rehearsed. Detectives reviewed the exterior security footage from the property. At 4:19 p.m. on May 25th, Noah was clearly seen entering the Airbnb with a small bag and what appeared to be a toy tucked under his arm. He smiled. He looked relaxed. There was no indication of tension. And then, nothing. There was no footage of him ever leaving. 3 days later, his car still sat undisturbed. And more troubling, cell phone records showed that Noah's number had sent several texts on the evening of the 25th, but the messages pinged from a tower in downtown Eugene, 60 miles away. Investigators knew they had a problem. Either someone else had used his phone, or someone was trying very hard to create a false trail. With a search warrant secured, forensic teams entered the Airbnb. It looked spotless, unnaturally so. Not a fingerprint on the sink handles. Not a smudge on the countertops. But when they turned off the lights and sprayed the luminol, the room told a different story. The bathroom lit up first, small specks on the tile floor. The kitchen showed long, uneven streaks, as though something had been dragged. And in the bedroom, the ceiling revealed something unmistakable, fine mist-like blood spatter. It was the kind of pattern created by high-force trauma, not a single accidental blow, but multiple. Someone had tried to clean, but not well enough. They brought Sierra in again. This time, her tone was different. She no longer claimed Noah had stormed off. She said he had been emotionally unstable, that maybe he hurt himself, maybe even disappeared on purpose. But when detectives asked her why his blood would be on the ceiling, and why traces of sedative were later found in the bathroom drain, she had no answer. It was then that police uncovered their first major lead. A local pharmacy receipt showed Sierra had filled a prescription for zolpidem, a strong sleep aid, just 4 days before the meeting with Noah. Toxicology tests from blood traces matched the compound. It wasn't just an argument that turned violent. It looked premeditated. Investigators now believed they were dealing with a homicide, one without a body. And therein lay the legal dilemma. In the United States, securing a murder conviction without a corpse is rare. Without a physical body, there's always room for reasonable doubt. Where is he? What if he ran? What if this was all a setup? But Joel Greene wasn't interested in legal theory. He just wanted his brother back. He posted flyers, contacted local media, and launched an online search campaign. He personally drove up and down the highways between Eugene and Florence. And then, one call changed everything. On June 1st, a sanitation worker in Newport, a coastal town 40 miles north, called in a tip. He had noticed several heavy, foul-smelling garbage bags dumped at rural collection points. Some were torn, leaking. He described the smell as worse than anything I've ever dealt with, not like trash, more like rot. Police combed the dump sites. Most bags contained nothing unusual, spoiled food, yard debris. But one stood out. Inside was a small Spider-Man hoodie, torn at the sleeve, stained dark brown. Joel confirmed it in an instant. Noah had posted a picture of Eli wearing that exact hoodie on his birthday, just weeks before. This wasn't just an item of clothing. It was a chilling signpost. Whoever had harmed Noah wanted to erase him completely. And they weren't afraid to get their hands dirty doing it. The case had now crossed from suspicion into horror. Noah Greene hadn't just vanished. He had been silenced. And the woman who claimed to love him, the one he married, had a child with, fought for in court, was now the only one standing in the center of a story that no longer made any sense. And yet, the worst was still to come. Before Noah Greene became a face on a missing persons flyer, before his name trended across regional news and his car sat abandoned in front of an Airbnb on the coast, he was just a man in love. And he paid for that love with everything. He met Sierra Walsh in the fall of 2008 at a university alumni mixer in Portland. Noah was there reluctantly, coaxed by a friend. Sierra walked in with the kind of presence that turned heads without needing to try. She was radiant, well-spoken, and wore a confidence that came not from ego, but from entitlement, the kind that grows when you've never really been denied anything. Her father owned a chain of recreational vehicle dealerships throughout Oregon and parts of Washington. Her mother chaired 2 art foundations and donated heavily to academic scholarships. Sierra had grown up in riverfront homes, flown first class since childhood, and graduated from a private liberal arts college in Vermont. She had never lived paycheck to paycheck. She had never clipped coupons. Noah had. He was the oldest of 3 kids raised in a modest home in Salem. His father was a mechanic with rough, oil-stained hands. His mother worked the night shift at a nursing home. They never owned a new car. Noah's first laptop was bought secondhand. He paid for his own tuition through scholarships, tutoring, and janitorial work. He didn't carry himself like a victim of hardship, though, just someone who knew the weight of effort. Their attraction was undeniable. She admired his sincerity. He admired her poise. They married in the summer of 2011. The wedding was picturesque, held in the Walsh family vineyard, with string quartets and a photo booth under the stars. Noah wore a rented tux. Sierra wore custom silk. He thought it was the beginning of their life. It was actually the start of a slow unraveling. Within months of marriage, the fractures emerged. Sierra had assumed her parents would continue supporting her financially even after she married, but when they cut her off, she was shocked and embarrassed. Rather than tell Noah, she used their joint credit card freely, designer handbags, boutique skincare, dinners with friends. When Noah questioned a $3,200 charge from a downtown boutique, she laughed. "I needed a coat," she said, sipping wine. "Besides, you make enough." But he didn't. At that point, Noah was in his second year of law school, juggling coursework with late-night tutoring gigs. He brought home $600 a month. They were renting a 600-square-foot apartment and rationing groceries. The financial pressure mounted. But it wasn't just money. It was values. Sierra refused to work. She told friends that being a wife was a full-time job. She spent her days browsing online stores, scheduling manicures, and posting curated shots of their life, smiling brunches, scenic drives, carefully filtered pictures of their cat. But behind the camera, tension simmered. Noah tried. He did. He suggested part-time work for her, even remote roles. He cooked most nights, handled the bills, and arranged weekly budget meetings. But every suggestion he made was met with resistance. She called him cheap, accused him of trying to control her. Their arguments turned personal, then physical. One night in late 2013, during a fight over an unpaid phone bill, Sierra threw her glass of red wine across the room. It shattered on the wall above Noah's head. Another time, she slammed a cabinet door so hard it splintered. But Noah didn't tell anyone. He believed it would pass. He believed marriage was something you fixed, not fled. In 2014, Sierra found out she was pregnant. And for a moment, things changed. She glowed during pregnancy, decorated the nursery with watercolor clouds, played soft music at night. Noah worked extra shifts to afford prenatal care and parenting classes. He read books. He bought a second-hand stroller. He was ready. Their son, Eli, was born early but healthy. Noah held him in his arms and cried. For the first few months, Sierra appeared transformed. She doted on the baby, took endless photos, and posted weekly updates about the joy of motherhood. But beneath the surface, her resentment returned, stronger this time. She hated the way the baby disrupted her sleep, hated the boring routines, hated how Noah was always working. She began locking herself in the bathroom for hours at a time. She scrolled Instagram while Eli cried in his crib. On bad days, she screamed at Noah in front of the baby. On worse days, she went silent, shutting down completely, passive but charged like a ticking clock. In the winter of 2015, during a particularly brutal argument over diapers and money, Sierra threw Noah's phone at his face, splitting the skin under his eye. He told the emergency clinic he slipped on ice. He didn't press charges. He didn't tell his family. But a month later, he filed for divorce. The process was long and bitter. Sierra fought every clause, claimed he was unfit because of his long work hours. Her attorney painted Noah as distant, cold, emotionally unavailable. And in the end, the court awarded her full custody of Eli, citing her role as the primary caregiver. Noah was devastated, but he didn't disappear. He paid every cent of child support, $295 a month, scraped together from adjunct teaching, tutoring, and any legal freelance he could pick up. He called. He wrote letters. He sent birthday cards and Christmas gifts. But Sierra didn't answer. For 2 full years after the divorce, she blocked every attempt Noah made to see his son. She cited scheduling issues, illness, last-minute plans. Her texts were curt, sometimes mocking. "Try harder next time," she wrote once after canceling a visit the night before. So Noah did. He filed a formal complaint with the court in April 2019. He accused Sierra of violating the visitation agreement. And this time, the judge agreed. She was ordered to allow visitation no later than May 25th. Noah marked the date on his calendar. He bought new clothes for Eli, a Spider-Man hoodie, his son's favorite. He called Joel and said, "I think this is the start of something better." He had no idea it would be the end. Because on that weekend, the one he had waited months for, Sierra finally agreed to meet. But she didn't come with peace. She came with a plan. Noah Greene thought he had won something. It wasn't full custody, not even joint rights, just the basic recognition that he, too, was a parent. After months of court filings and missed birthdays, the judge had ruled in his favor. His ex-wife, Sierra Walsh, would be legally required to allow him visitation with their 6-year-old son, Eli, beginning no later than May 25th. Noah clung to that date like a buoy in dark water. He marked it in red ink on the family calendar that still hung on his kitchen wall, even though he now lived alone. Every day, he added a small black X beside it. When he reached May 1st, he circled the entire week, planning time off, researching where he might take Eli for lunch, even looking into amusement parks along the Oregon coast. He had no idea that while he was preparing toys, snacks, and conversation starters, Sierra was preparing something else entirely. On May 10th, 11 days before the scheduled visitation, Sierra Walsh opened a private browser tab and typed 5 words into a search engine. How to kill without trace. She read obsessively. She bookmarked articles about cremation weight, blood spatter removal, sedative masking. Then she searched for lethal dose nicotine, How to Stage a Disappearance, and How Long Does DNA Survive Bleach? Her history was a blueprint of premeditation. But no one knew. On May 14th, she visited a local clinic, claiming she hadn't been sleeping. The physician, noting signs of stress, prescribed her a 10-day supply of zolpidem. She thanked him, smiled, and left. On May 17th, she drove alone to the coastal town of Florence, the same place where she and Noah would later meet. She didn't go for sightseeing. She was scouting. An Airbnb tucked between overgrown pines, secluded from the highway, with no neighboring houses in visible range. The listing promised privacy, woodsy charm, and no Wi-Fi, so you can truly disconnect. It was perfect. She booked it for 2 nights, May 25th and 26th. The next day, she stopped at a big-box supermarket and filled a handheld basket with what looked like a hiker's kit: duct tape, rubber gloves, extra-strength bleach, a carving knife, and heavy-duty trash bags. At the register, she asked the clerk to scan her rewards card. Smiling. The week leading up to the 25th, she reached out to Noah with an unexpected tone. She said she had been reflecting. That perhaps they should put the past behind them, for Eli's sake. That she was open to the idea of spending the visitation day together, the 3 of them, like a family trip. Just a walk on the beach, some memories for our son, she wrote. Closure, maybe. Noah was surprised. But he wasn't suspicious. He told Joel that things might finally be turning around. She sounds sincere, he said. It's just one day. I don't care about me, I just want Eli to feel safe. May 25th arrived under a dull gray sky. Noah drove down from Eugene, dressed in a light jacket, carrying a small backpack with sunscreen, water bottles, and the Spider-Man hoodie he had bought for Eli's birthday. He stopped at a gas station to fill up and bought an extra juice box, strawberry, Eli's favorite. He met Sierra outside her parents' house. Eli was already waiting in the back seat, legs swinging, face lighting up when he saw his father. Noah hugged him for a long time, eyes glistening. Sierra stood by the car, hands folded, unreadable. They drove together to the amusement park first. Noah bought tickets, cotton candy, and matching baseball caps. They played arcade games. They laughed. Sierra even offered to take pictures. Noah held Eli's hand the entire time. Later that afternoon, Sierra suggested heading to the Airbnb she had booked. There's a little fire pit, she said. Let's cook something simple. Let him wind down. No screens, no distractions. Noah agreed. At the cabin, while father and son played cards on the bedroom floor, Sierra busied herself in the kitchen. She made beef curry, Eli's favorite, and portioned it carefully. But Noah's plate was seasoned with something extra. Within 20 minutes of eating, he began to feel dizzy. He stood up, blinked, staggered slightly. Maybe I'm just tired, he said out loud, mostly to himself. Sierra told Eli to go into the next room and set up his toy racetrack. She turned the volume on the battery-powered controller up, just loud enough. Noah collapsed onto the floor. Not unconscious yet, but weak. He reached a hand toward the table, mouth slackening, eyes fogging. Sierra walked calmly to the bedroom, opened a drawer, and removed the knife she had purchased a week earlier. She didn't hesitate. She stabbed him once, then again. Noah groaned, his hand clawing at the floor. He tried to crawl, but his muscles were fading, numbed by the sedative. The 3rd strike silenced him. Blood spread in slow, broken arcs across the bedroom rug. She waited, then left the room. She told Eli to stay where he was and returned with gloves and garbage bags. Over the next 3 hours, Sierra executed a plan that she had rehearsed in her mind for days. She used cleaning agents to scrub the kitchen and bathroom. She sealed bloodied items into trash liners. She lifted Noah's phone and at exactly 9:12 p.m. sent a message to his brother Joel. Just wrapping up. All went well. Talk tomorrow. Then she shut off the phone and began dismembering what remained of the man who once loved her. By the time the sun rose on May 26th, Sierra Walsh was already in motion. Noah Greene's body no longer lay where it had fallen. The blood-stained floor had been scrubbed, sprayed, and blotted with so many layers of cleaning agents that the air inside the cabin smelled less like wood smoke and more like bleach. She had worked methodically through the night, pausing only to change gloves, rinse tools, and make sure Eli remained asleep in the adjacent room. What she had done wasn't just murder. It was a strategy. First, she secured the Airbnb's trash into labeled bags, clean ones, ordinary ones, which she left in the designated bin outside. It was the other bags, the heavy ones wrapped in triple layers of black plastic and tightly knotted, that she placed into a large suitcase Noah himself had brought. Inside were clothes, towels, plastic sheeting, and the unthinkable. At 10:43 a.m., security footage from the cabin's shared driveway captured Sierra loading the suitcase into the back of her vehicle. She looked composed, even serene. Eli sat in the back seat, eating crackers and humming to himself, still wearing the Spider-Man hoodie Noah had given him the day before. She dropped Eli off at her parents' house without explanation. Then she drove south. Over the next 48 hours, Sierra executed what can only be described as a traveling vanishment. She made multiple stops. A landfill outside Reedsport, where she disposed of the first 3 bags. A gas station along Route 101, where she washed her hands twice and paid in cash. A hospital in Coos Bay, where she had a small cut on her hand examined, an injury sustained during the dismemberment, which she claimed was from slicing an avocado too fast. And then, on the night of May 28th at exactly 8:27 p.m., she boarded a ferry at Newport Harbor. Onboard security cameras captured her dragging a large suitcase onto the deck. The Pacific wind blew through her hair as she stood at the far end of the boat, looking out at the black water. At 9:10 p.m., she reached into her luggage, pulled out a heavy black bag, and hurled it over the railing. The motion was clean, practiced. The bag hit the surface once, then disappeared into the waves. What was inside has never been confirmed, but investigators believe it may have contained the only remaining parts of Noah Greene. Once the ferry docked, Sierra continued driving through the night, arriving back in Eugene around 4 a.m. Her next step? Erase the trail. She went to her father's apartment, a property he rarely used, and had an electric saw delivered under his name. She stopped at a local hardware store and purchased a dust-proof painter's suit, goggles, and additional trash bags. She used the garage space to continue cleaning and separating any lingering material. And once again, the plastic-wrapped evidence vanished into different dumpsters across the city. To the untrained eye, her life resumed normally. She texted friends. She posted a filtered photo of Eli's lunch on Instagram. She called her husband, Terry, and complained about how exhausting parenting was this weekend. She even returned several unused items from her earlier hardware store run: gloves, bleach, and duct tape, with the receipt still intact. But the one thing she didn't do was tell anyone Noah was missing. Instead, she staged the next phase of the deception, the victim narrative. Using Noah's phone, which she had kept, Sierra sent a message to her own number, posing as him. The text read, "Sierra, I'm sorry. I messed up again. I don't know what came over me. I just wanted to feel close again. Please don't report me. I've already lost my job offers, you know that." She showed the message to Terry, crying as she told him that Noah had attacked her while they were away and that she'd fought him off. She didn't want to involve police, for Eli's sake, she said. She just needed time to process. Terry believed her, at least for a while. But Noah's brother didn't. By May 29th, Joel Greene had contacted the police again, frantic. His brother's phone was off. His car hadn't moved. No one, not his law department, not his landlord, not even his classmates, had heard from him since the weekend. Detectives returned to the Airbnb. They pulled more footage, spoke to staff, and this time obtained a full forensic warrant. The second search revealed subtle, chilling details. Traces of blood beneath the freshly cleaned mattress. A drop of what appeared to be diluted bleach seeping into the baseboards. And in the septic tank, filtered through the water lines, residue of zolpidem. But still, no body. Sierra was brought in for questioning again. She repeated the assault story. Denied any knowledge of where Noah went afterward. When asked why she never called the police, she said she didn't want to ruin his life more than it already was. Detectives asked about the hospital visit. She said, "Just a kitchen accident." They asked about the ferry. She said, "Needed to clear my head." They asked about the returned bleach and gloves. She said, "Overprepared." They had no warrant to arrest her. Not yet. But they were close. Behind the scenes, digital analysts were reconstructing Sierra's browsing history. Forensics teams were testing every item recovered from dumpsters. Joel was doing interviews with local media, pleading for public help. Then came the final shift. On June 1st, with enough circumstantial evidence and overwhelming forensic irregularities, police raided Sierra's home. There, in the garage, they recovered several items that changed everything. A blood-stained utility belt with Noah's initials embroidered inside. An opened bottle of Zolpidem with Sierra's name and prescription date. And most damning of all, remnants of Noah's DNA on a pair of discarded gloves found beneath the floor mat in her car. The arrest was swift, quiet, but the storm that followed was anything but. The woman who appeared in court on the morning of June 5, 2019, bore little resemblance to the smiling wife seen in family photos from years past. Sierra Walsh sat quietly at the defense table, hair tied neatly, wearing a navy blue blouse with a soft collar. She didn't cry. She didn't fidget. Her hands were folded gently on her lap, as if she were waiting for a train, not a murder indictment. There were no signs of breakdown, no visible remorse. Only a stillness so complete that even seasoned courtroom reporters noted its chill. What shocked people wasn't just the crime itself. It was who she seemed to be. Neighbors in Eugene described Sierra as friendly, soft-spoken, the type who gave away extra baby food to young mothers down the street. A retired school teacher said Sierra once organized a clothing drive. A barista remembered her always smiling, always tipping. Even her husband's coworkers said, she just seemed normal. But the more investigators dug, the more they found. Normal was an illusion. Behind the pleasant exterior was a pattern of emotional volatility, passive-aggressive behavior, and deep-rooted manipulation. Those closest to her, especially Noah, had seen glimpses of it. But no one had connected the dots in time. During interrogations, Sierra carefully controlled the narrative. She spoke in measured tones. She avoided contractions. "I did not know what happened," she said. "I was scared. I was trying to protect my son." She insisted the messages from Noah were real. She insisted the blood found in her car was from a nosebleed he had during the trip. She even suggested that he may have staged his own death to escape debt or shame. But it didn't hold. Not when forensic experts testified that the blood patterns at the Airbnb indicated multiple high-force impacts. Not when digital records proved Sierra had used Noah's phone after he went missing. Not when her browser history read like a checklist for body disposal. Yet the case wasn't airtight, because there was still no body. And in the American justice system, no body means risk. Sierra's defense attorneys seized on that. They argued that the state was relying on suggestion, not proof. That the absence of a corpse left reasonable doubt. That even if Sierra had cleaned the Airbnb, it didn't mean she had killed Noah. They floated alternative theories. Mental breakdown, joint suicide, mistaken identity. Public opinion didn't care. By the end of June, the name Sierra Walsh had become synonymous with betrayal. Talk shows debated her motives. Podcasts dissected her search history. Online forums labeled her the smiling executioner. But for all the noise, the legal battle had only just begun. Then, a new revelation shattered what little credibility she had left. Detectives reopened a cold case. 3 months before Noah's disappearance, on March 1, 2019, Sierra's stepson, the 5-year-old son of her husband Terry, had died suddenly in their home. At the time, the death was ruled accidental, suffocation during sleep. Terry, devastated, believed he had rolled onto the boy in the night. But now the story looked different. Autopsy reports from the original investigation were re-examined. Small bruises on the boy's chest. Traces of sedative in his bloodstream. Blood on the bedsheet, faint but present, from the mouth, not the nose. Forensic experts concluded that the child had been forcefully compressed at both the chest and face simultaneously, something unlikely to happen by accident, especially with a child that age. There was no official charge filed against Sierra in that death. But public doubt turned to fury. Reporters descended on her current husband, Terry, who refused interviews. Some neighbors started taping "Justice for Noah" posters on her old fence. Strangers left letters at her doorstep, some pleading for the truth, others not so kind. Meanwhile, Sierra's legal team began to fall apart. One by one, her private attorneys filed motions to withdraw from the case, citing irreconcilable ethical concerns. By July 5, she was appointed a public defender. The courthouse clerks said they had never seen anything like it. And through it all, Sierra remained composed. No outbursts, no confessions, no emotion. Some speculated she was dissociating. Others suggested she was calculating. A clinical psychologist, brought in as an outside evaluator, offered a chilling diagnosis: cluster B traits consistent with borderline and narcissistic personality structures. In other words, unstable, manipulative, and potentially dangerous. The prosecution leaned into this. They argued Sierra had an intense emotional fixation on Noah, that she couldn't bear the idea of him gaining even partial access to their son. That the court's decision on visitation wasn't just a legal loss, it was, in her mind, a personal humiliation. And she had responded with control. Final control. Not in rage, not in impulse, but in planning. Painstaking, step-by-step, rehearsed brutality. Still, the prosecution's case hung by a thread. Noah's body had never been found. Only items. Traces, hints. They needed something more. And then came one of the case's final, and most devastating, pieces of evidence. A hair sample. Recovered from a garbage bag pulled from a landfill outside Reedsport, the strand was tangled in duct tape used to seal the bag. DNA tests confirmed it belonged to Noah Greene. On the same tape, a partial fingerprint, smudged but identifiable, matched Sierra. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. The judge ruled that the case would proceed to trial on charges of first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. As she was escorted out of the courtroom, a camera caught Sierra turning her head slightly. Just for a second. Her eyes scanned the crowd. Joel Greene was there, sitting in the front row, arms crossed. They locked eyes for a moment. Then she looked away. Courtroom 2B of the Lane County Courthouse was full by 8:30 a.m. on September 16, 2019, a full hour before the trial was scheduled to begin. Reporters lined the back row, laptops open. Family members of both the victim and the defendant filled the wooden benches in tense silence. Local residents, drawn by the morbid curiosity of a case that had gripped the entire state, waited outside in the early autumn chill, hoping to be let in. And at the center of it all sat Sierra Walsh, flanked by her newly appointed public defenders. She did not look afraid. If anything, her demeanor felt performative, polite, neutral. Her hands were folded. Her eyes didn't dart. When the bailiff called for silence, she nodded faintly, as if acknowledging the beginning of a work meeting. But this wasn't routine. It was the first day of a murder trial without a body, and every word would matter. The prosecution opened with a clear statement. We may not have a corpse, but we have blood. We have chemicals. We have the timeline. We have the planning. And we have the motive. Lead prosecutor Michelle Hartman, known in legal circles for her calm but devastating delivery, spoke with surgical precision. She laid out a story not only of violence, but of escalation. Of a mother who saw visitation not as a compromise, but as humiliation. Of a woman who traded empathy for erasure. Piece by piece, the state presented its evidence. Security footage showing Noah arriving at the Airbnb and never leaving. Text messages sent from Noah's phone after his disappearance, all pinging from locations where Sierra had been. Cleaning supplies, knives, duct tape, and bleach purchased days before the meeting. Blood traces in the cabin, on the ceiling, in the shower drain, under furniture. Digital searches retrieved from Sierra's browser: how to dissolve tissue, how long does DNA last in water, nicotine poisoning symptoms. And then came the critical turn: expert witnesses. A forensic toxicologist testified that zolpidem, the sedative found in the Airbnb drains, would have rendered an adult male semiconscious within 15 to 20 minutes if mixed into food. A blood spatter analyst demonstrated, using 3D modeling, how the ceiling stains in the bedroom were consistent with upward arterial spray, not defensive wounds. Then came Joel Greene. Noah's younger brother took the stand with steady hands and a shaking voice. He recounted his brother's obsession with seeing his son again, the carefully prepared gifts, the court orders, the final call where Noah had said, "I think things are going to be better this time." The courtroom was silent as Joel read the last text Noah had allegedly sent, now proven to have been typed by Sierra herself. Just wrapping up. All went well. Talk tomorrow. A lie. Written after his blood had already soaked into the floor. The defense was relentless in their strategy, and it had only one path: reasonable doubt. They emphasized what was missing. No body. No murder weapon recovered. No direct witness. No full DNA match in the bags from the landfill, only partial evidence. Sierra's attorney painted her as a flawed, overwhelmed mother, emotionally unstable perhaps, but not a murderer. They pointed to Noah's mental health, citing stress from graduate school and financial hardship. They raised the possibility that he staged his own disappearance or fell victim to another crime after leaving the cabin. Absence of evidence, the defense repeated, is not evidence of guilt. The jury listened. They scribbled. But they didn't blink. Because then came the final forensic linchpin, the hair and duct tape recovered from the landfill. The prosecution's forensic DNA expert confirmed that not only did the hair match Noah with over 99.9% certainty, but the adhesive on the tape bore Sierra's fingerprint, distorted but undeniable. That, Hartman argued, was intent physically sealed into plastic. Day 8 of the trial brought the first visible crack in Sierra's composure. As the prosecution projected a photo of the Spider-Man hoodie found in the garbage pile, torn, soaked, and balled up, Sierra lowered her head. Not in grief, not in guilt, but in calculation. Observers noted her breathing pattern changed, sharp inhales, long holds. Not a breakdown, but something more mechanical. Like someone managing the optics of emotion, instead of feeling it. Still, she refused to testify. Her attorneys advised against it. And she agreed without resistance. The defense closed with one last plea to the jury. You cannot convict someone of murder if you don't know for certain that the victim is dead. It was a bold line. But the jury had spent 2 weeks learning how certainty in law doesn't always require a corpse. Deliberations began on the morning of October 2nd. By the second day, they had a verdict. The courtroom was packed. As Sierra stood to hear the decision, her face was blank. She didn't glance toward Joel, or toward the judge, or even at her own attorneys. The words landed like thunder. We find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. We find the defendant guilty of abuse of a corpse. Gasps echoed. Joel's hands tightened into fists on his lap. One juror wept. Sierra blinked once. That was all. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led out in handcuffs, the courtroom remained completely still. No applause. No cheers. Just a thick, unspoken grief. Noah Greene had not come back. But the silence he left behind had spoken louder than any scream. There was no grave. No urn. No ashes to scatter across the cliffs of the Oregon coast where Noah Greene used to hike as a student. Instead, on a quiet Sunday morning in October, just weeks after the verdict, Joel Greene stood with his parents in a local park, clutching a wooden box that contained only 3 things: a folded Spider-Man hoodie, 7 strands of hair recovered from Noah's favorite hat, and a handwritten note from a boy who could barely write. The note read, "Thank you for my toy car, Dad. I miss you." It was signed with a backwards E and a smiley face. This was how the Greene family said goodbye. To a son, a brother, a father, a man who had done everything right, who had waited, fought, hoped, and was met, not with peace, but with erasure. After the trial, Sierra Walsh was transferred to the Oregon Correctional Institution for Women. Inmate records listed her status as Level 4, high security. She was housed in a single-person cell. Allowed limited contact. No media interviews. She didn't appeal the verdict. She didn't speak to the press. She didn't even request contact with her son, Eli. And that may have been the most chilling part. Because in the wake of all the horror, the staged texts, the fairy disposal, the bleach-soaked floors, it became clear that Sierra hadn't acted out of rage or panic. She had acted out of calculation. In her eyes, Noah wasn't just a person. He was an obstacle. A threat to the image she wanted to maintain, the control she refused to relinquish, the version of motherhood that allowed no space for anyone but herself. Removing him was not impulsive. It was methodical removal of interference. The Greene family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, not for money, but for legal acknowledgement. They pushed for legislation in Noah's name aimed at strengthening protections for parents facing repeated visitation interference and for stricter review of contested custody cases where one parent shows signs of coercive control. The bill stalled in subcommittee. But the message spread. Because Noah's story wasn't just about what happened, it was about what wasn't allowed to happen. He never got to walk his son to school. He never got to hear him say, "I love you," without a courtroom barrier. He never got a second chance to co-parent, to grow, to try again, to simply exist. And in a way, that's what haunts most about this case. Not just the brutality, but the mundane cruelty that came before it. The canceled visits. The unread messages. The small, daily rejections that stacked like bricks until they formed a wall, one Sierra decided would only come down if Noah disappeared behind it forever. Eli lives with Noah's parents now. He doesn't remember much. Just that his father had warm hands. That he gave good hugs. That he always said, "I'm proud of you," even when he spilled juice or forgot his backpack. Therapists say memory is a fragile thing at that age. It fades, twists, reshapes. But the Greenes hold onto what they can. Photos. Voicemails. One video where Noah holds Eli on his lap and teaches him how to clap in rhythm. That video has been played 1,000 times. Because sometimes, when there's no body, no closure, no physical trace, all you have left is sound. There are stories that end in resolution. A body found, a confession given, a sentence served. And then there are stories like this. Stories that leave behind holes, not just in the ground, but in the lives of those left standing. The truth of Noah Greene's death is not only found in court transcripts or evidence bags. It's found in the unlit bedroom of a boy who waits by the window. In the emails that will never get replies. In the way a family's dinner table always has one empty chair, the chair they never dared to move. Because to move it would mean acceptance. And some absences are just too loud to accept. Noah Greene never came home. But what he stood for, quiet persistence, decency, unconditional love, still echoes. In the lives he touched. In the son he adored. In the fight his family continues. And in the lesson that some evils don't wear masks or carry weapons. They sit across from you at dinner, smiling politely, while making plans you'll never understand until it's too late.